Hi, everyone, and welcome. I'm so glad you decided to join me for my FAFSA prep and strategies for maximizing your financial aid webinar. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Tina Steele, and I'm known as the FAFSA Guru. I have over 30 years of experience working in college planning with expertise in financial aid, and I've assisted thousands of families in navigating the overwhelming, confusing, and frustrating financial aid process. In addition, I'm also mom and bonus mom, mom of 4 daughters, bonus mom of two boys, and they range in age from 18 to 31. So I've also been on the same side as you, helping a number of these kiddos head off to college. And my youngest daughter just headed off to college this last fall. So I'm officially an empty nester after 41 years, which is crazy to me. So tonight, what I'm going to talk to you all about is how to get ready for the FAFSA. We're going to talk about the different types of financial aid that are available to make sure that you all understand that, preparing for the FAFSA and what you need to know, a little bit about the CSS profile because I have so many families that come to me for consultations that have no idea what a CSS profile is, and it's very, very important. We're going to talk about how colleges determine financial aid offers, common FAFSA mistakes to avoid that can cost you thousands of dollars, and a couple strategies for maximizing those financial aid offers, which I'm sure you all want to do. So let's just dive right in. First, I want to talk to you all about the different types of financial aid that are available and how to access them to make sure you're all familiar with this. There's federal and state aid, institutional aid, scholarships, and then lastly, alternative and private education loans. So the FAFSA form, which is known as the free application for federal student aid, is what you fill out every single year to apply for federal and state financial aid. Sometimes, depending on the state you live in, there's a separate state aid application that you would fill out to be considered for a state scholarship. Those are need-based, so you would have to be under a certain income to qualify for that. And unfortunately, middle income families get hit the hardest when it comes to financial aid, especially with all the new changes that happened this last financial aid cycle. The 24-25 financial aid cycle was the most challenging one that I've ever seen in my over 30 years in the field. And it even opened a little bit, it's a little bit late this year, but so far so good. And I feel like we're moving in the right direction. We're not going to have as many issues and glitches and things like we did last year. So let's talk a little bit about the federal and state aid. When you fill out a FAFSA form, you're being considered for grants. These are free and they are need-based, so only students and families with certain incomes will qualify for grants. If you are a dependent student and need to put parent information on the form, typically once you hit the $70,000 income range, once your parents' combined income hits that, you start going out of the range for qualifying for grants. If you're an independent student that's single on your own, no children, not married, then once you start earning $16,000 or $17,000 a year or more, you also start going out of that range of qualifying for these grants. The Pell Grant is the largest one. You can get up to almost $7,500 a year for this. There's also something known as an SEOG or Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. You can get up to $4,000 a year for this, depending on how much SEOG money the College Financial Aid Office has to offer. And then lastly, you can qualify for state grants. These vary from state to state, but typically you can get anywhere up to like $2,500 a year for the state grant as long as you meet your state FAFSA deadline. Every state has their own FAFSA deadline that you need to get your FAFSA completed by in order to be considered for the state grant. And then every college also has their own priority deadlines for filling out the FAFSA and CSS, which are separate, and we'll talk about those. You're also going to be considered for something known as federal work study. Federal work study is a type of need-based financial aid that allows students to get a job working on campus part-time and they can earn a paycheck for the work that they do. They can then choose to have the money they earn from this work study job go directly towards their student account and pay their tuition, or they can receive that money in the form of a paycheck and use it for incidentals and things like that, which is what I see the majority of students do. The nice thing about federal work study is it's flexible. You know, if a student gets awarded $2,000 a semester in work study funds, that means that he or she can find a work study job on campus and can earn up to $2,000 in work study money. So in order to get that money, the student actually has to do the work to earn it. And then also there are student loans. The direct student loan is considered federal aid. It is a loan that every single student can borrow to help them pay for college, and it is not based on credit. So for dependent students that are just coming out of high school or under 24 years old, that are not married, don't have any children of their own, then the loan limits they qualify for are $5,500 for their first year, $6,500 for the second year, and $7,500 for their third and fourth year. If you're an independent student and you don't need your parents' information on the FAFSA, you can qualify for $9,500 your first year, $10,500 your second year, and $12,500 your third and fourth year. And then graduate students can borrow up to $20,500 a year on a direct student loan. Again, this is a loan that is not based on credit, regardless of how old you are or your credit. The only way you could get denied this loan would be if you are currently in default on another federal direct student loan. And in order to borrow this loan, you have to fill out a FAFSA form. The other type of loan that you're being considered for is a Parent Plus loan. This is a loan that is in a parent's name only, that a parent can borrow on behalf of their dependent student to help them pay for college. This loan is based on credit, and parents can borrow the total financial aid gap. So essentially that would be the total net cost, whatever the cost of attendance is of the college minus the financial aid offered. The difference between those two numbers is what the parent can borrow in a loan. Then parents can also borrow an additional, not parents, sorry, students can borrow an additional unsubsidized direct student loan in their own name. So if you have a dependent student just graduating high school that would normally get $5,500 in a direct loan, that would increase to $9,500 because you were denied a Parent Plus loan. You just need to notify the college financial aid office about this denial, and then they can process that. Graduate students, and I forgot to put that bullet on here, can also borrow the plus loans. So graduate students would typically do this if the cost of their graduate program is more than the direct student loan of $20,500 a year will cover. Then they can tap into the plus loans. They're called graduate plus loans. Those are based on credit, and they can use those loans to borrow the difference. So that's what federal and state aid. It is the grants which are free based on income. Those are need-based. Federal work study, which is need-based. The federal direct student loan, and then the federal Parent Plus loan. In order to be able to even borrow those loans, you have to fill out a FAFSA. Then we move into something called institutional aid. So this is college specific, and colleges are either going to use the FAFSA to determine this, or they're going to use the CSS Profile. So some colleges require a supplemental financial aid form known as the CSS Profile in order to determine how much of this institutional need-based scholarship money they are going to award. There's about a little over 300 colleges across the U.S. That actually require the CSS profile. And it's very, very important that you know whether or not your college does or the colleges do. You can do a simple Google search that says colleges that require CSS profile to determine this. I've talked to 5 different families within the last week who had no idea what a CSS profile was, and they did not even know they needed to fill one out. And if you miss filling out the CSS profile, you actually miss out on qualifying for any of their institutional scholarship money. So it's a huge deal, and you need to make sure that you're aware of it. So Institutional aid is free scholarship money that's awarded directly by each college, and it comes in two different types. There's merit-based aid and need-based aid. Some colleges have more to offer than others, and awards can vary significantly between colleges. So I always tell students and families to not necessarily rule out expensive colleges for this reason. You could see a similar financial aid package or your bottom line could be similar at like a really expensive private institution as it could be at a public in-state institution for this reason. It comes down to how much institutional aid they have to offer. Merit-based scholarships are awarded based on the college admissions application. So once a student gets admitted to college and they receive their acceptance letter, they're also going to get notified of what they're going to qualify for in a merit scholarship for all 4 years, typically. That's when they get that notification. Not all colleges offer merit scholarships, so that's something to really be aware of as you're out there putting your college list together and searching for colleges. And then the third type of financial aid, and I'm almost through these four types, and then I'll move into the FAFSA information. The third type of financial aid is known as outside scholarships. This is where I see a lot of students leave money on the table. Outside scholarships are separate than the FAFSA, separate than the CSS. They are given by different agencies and organizations. They all have their own applications and deadlines, and it's important that you fill the application out by the deadline to be. There are all sorts of different types of scholarships, whether, oh, I just want to make sure that you guys can hear me okay. Sorry, having trouble. Okay, sorry. I see some chats coming through, guys, that I'm not able to answer right now, and I'm not sure what's going on with my camera, but hopefully I'll be able to get it back on soon. So sorry about that. There are different types of scholarships available that are merit-based, GPA, based on GPA and test scores, et cetera. Then there are non-academic and financial need-based scholarships. There are scholarships based on the major that you're studying, interests, abilities, state of residence, athletic ability, et cetera. You name it, there's probably a scholarship for it. There's a wide range of them available. It just comes down to consistently searching for these scholarships each and every year. So it is tedious for sure, but it's worth the time and effort. This is something that is, again, I see students leaving money on the table when they could have received, scholarships. And also a lot of students and families will be like, well, I've applied for so many, but I haven't received any. There's tricks and tips to applying for these scholarships. It's a matter of applying to ones that are not as competitive. There's better websites to use. These are all types of things that I go over with students and families in consultations when I'm kind of guiding them through this process. So the fourth type of financial aid is alternative and private education loans. And sorry about my camera. For some reason, it's just kind of going off and on, and I'm not sure why. But this is kind of a last resort when it comes to financial aid. Alternative and private education loans are intended to fill the financial aid gaps after you've exhausted every other option. And students can borrow these loans in their name, but they are credit-based, so they would need a cosigner if they don't have their own good credit. And parents can also borrow private education loans on behalf of their dependent student. Interest rates can tend to be a bit higher with these, and students can get into a whole lot of debt before they know it. So I'm just not a big advocate of alternative private education loans and tell families to only use them as a last resort. Okay, so now let's talk about FAFSA, which I'm sure that you're all waiting to hear about. This is the form you fill out every single year to apply for money to help you pay for college. It officially launches December 1st. However, it was recently announced last week that it's open and anybody can complete it. But what it is, right, it's been in the last testing phase or the beta testing phase, and so far it's gone really well. So you don't have to wait until December 1st to complete this. You can actually log into the FAFSA site now to do it. I recommend just giving it a little bit more time. It's not dire that you get this form filled out on December 1st. If you get it filled out like the first couple of weeks of December, you're still going to be way ahead of the game and you're giving the government time to work out all the kinks and things that might arise now that this is open for everybody to fill out. That's usually what happens when the FAFSA first opens. It is going to be based on prior year income. So you're going to use your 2023 tax information. You do have to fill it out every year. Students and parents, if the student is dependent, will fill it out together. A student is typically considered dependent if they're under 24 years old and they're not married, they do not have any children that they support on their own, and if they're not a veteran of the armed forces, they were not a ward of the court after the age of 13, they were not in foster care, and they are not homeless, they are considered dependent. It doesn't matter if they live out on their own, they're self-supporting or anything like that. The government is going to consider them dependent until one of those things happens that I just mentioned to all of you. Now, when filling out a FAFSA, if you're divorced or separated, for parents that are divorced or separated, filling out a FAFSA for their dependent student, if you're divorced or separated and you're not living together, then only one parent needs to fill this form out. And it would be the parent who provided more than half of the child's financial support within the last year, regardless of who claimed the child on their taxes and regardless of who that child lived with. So the 50-50 split, there's a lot of families out there that do this. The new regulations that came out this year from the government say if this applies to you, then the parent who provides more than half the parent who has a higher income is the parent that needs to fill out the FAFSA on behalf of the child. Also, if parents are not married, but they're living together, they also both need to fill out the FAFSA form. And if you're an independent student who's divorced or separated, you would fill out the FAFSA with just your information and not your spouse's. And something that's really important to note here, if you are the parent or you're filling this, out as an independent student on your own because you're divorced or separated and you're remarried, so if you're divorced and remarried, then you have to put your current spouse's information on the FAFSA. That means taxes, that means investments. It does not matter if that step parent is not helping support the children in the home. That is unfortunately just a FAFSA regulation, and that's what has to be done. There's a lot of confusion around this, so it's just important to make sure you understand who needs to actually fill out the FAFSA. Making mistakes can cost you thousands of dollars. I see it all the time. Some of the most common mistakes to avoid include there's two protected assets on your FAFSA that you do not have to report, and that would be the value of any retirement accounts you have and the value of the primary home that you live in. So you do not put those on the FAFSA. That's different for the CSS profile. The CSS, there are no protected assets. They want everything. Another common mistake I see, because this was a big change this last year, is reporting 529 plans for all children or listing it as a student asset. So if you have a 529 plan for your children and you're filling the FAFSA out for them as a dependent student, you only report the value of the 529 plan for the dependent child whose FAFSA you're filling out, and you list it as a parent investment, not a student investment. Student assets and investments get hit a lot harder than parents, so you don't want to make that mistake. You want to make sure you're reporting the value of the 529 as a parent investment. Reporting incorrect marital status, if you're divorced, if you're separated, and you filed a joint tax return on the FAFSA, a lot of times people think because when you fill the FAFSA out now, what happens is it's an automatic upload of your tax return. You're not even choosing to select to import it anymore. You're giving the government permission to upload your tax return. So if you filled out a joint return, but you're currently separated living in different households, they're going to upload that joint return. So when you get to the marital status section and it asks what your marital status is, it's very important that you indicate that you're separated because that will prompt the FAFSA to open up some questions asking you about your income information and not your spouse's income information. And this is what the financial aid offices will use to determine financial aid offers. So very, very important. This is one of the most common mistakes that I see. You do not want to report joint income even if you filed a joint tax return when you're divorced or separated. Waiting too long to fill it out with financial aid, it is kind of like the early bird gets the worms. Sorry about that. Um, I'm operating on a 12-hour day today, so apologize if I'm jumbling my words. Leaving blank fields, that can lead to miscalculations of the FAFSA, so just put a 0 in if it doesn't apply to you. Not using an FSA ID to fill it out, that can delay things. Everybody needs to get an FSA ID prior to filling out a FAFSA, which I will talk about. Not reading directions carefully about what information to report. Most questions on the FAFSA have a little I box next to it where you can click on it and you can get some more details about what they're looking for that particular question. Not writing down your FSA ID and keeping it in a safe place. Sometimes I spend more time helping students and parents try to reset and access that FSA ID than I do actually helping them fill out the FAFSA form. So this is the same ID that you're going to use for all 4 years that you're in college. So just write it down and keep it somewhere in a safe place. And then missing the FAFSA deadline, especially if there's priority deadlines at your college. If any student is applying early action, then there's going to be some priority filing deadlines to ensure that that student gets their financial aid offer in a timely manner and early because they applied early. If you miss that priority filing deadline for early action, then you're not going to get that. So these are all things that are just really important to be thinking about as you get ready to fill out the FAFSA form. So the first thing you need to do, as I mentioned, is create an FSA ID. Every single student needs to do this. They need to have their own FSA ID, and there's a lot of confusion around creating this. You're creating a username and password. You're setting that up, and then that information is going to go to the Social Security Administration and get verified. You'll then get an email in a few days letting you know that your Social Security number has been verified. So you're going to create that FSA ID up. So if you're a dependent student, one parent needs to create an FSA ID. The only exception to this would be if a student has two parents has parents that are separated, or they're married living in the same household, but they filed separate tax returns, then both of those parents would need an FSA ID because they're both going to have to log in and upload their own, or allow the government to upload their own tax information. I know it's a lot of information and it's confusing. I'm trying to get through all of this in a short amount of time to not keep you all super long tonight, but I will give you all an opportunity to connect with me, give you ways to reach out to me if you have questions and things like that at the end of this. So you can create this FSA ID at studentaid.gov. This is also where you're going to fill out the FAFSA form. And the best way to fill out the FAFSA, from what I've experienced this last year, because of all the confusion around the student section and the parent section, is to have the student go in, fill out their section first, and then have the student invite the parent contributor, and then you as the parent go in and fill it out on behalf of your student. And if you're independent, of course, you don't need to put your parent information on the FAFSA, you're just putting your own information. In terms of inviting a parent contributor, this is another area that I'm seeing a lot of mistakes. When the student gets to this section, there's two fields. So of course they think, okay, I got to invite both of my parents, but that's not necessarily the case. If as parents, you're married and you file a joint tax return, then the student only needs to invite one parent to fill out the FAFSA because that parent is going to have their joint tax return uploaded and answer questions about their spouse. If the student's parents are separated but living together, then separated or divorced but still living together, then the student is going to invite both parents. And then each parent will need their own FSA ID to log in and ensure that the government gets access to their taxes. If students' parents are not married, never were married, but they are living together in the same household, they will have to invite both of those parents as contributors to the FAFSA form, and then each of those parents will have to create their own FSA ID. If parents are divorced or separated and they're not living in the same household, then the student only needs to invite one parent as a contributor because only one parent needs to fill out the FAFSA form. And remember, it's the parent who provided more than half of the student's financial support within the last year that is the one that needs to be the FAFSA contributor, regardless of who the student lives with, regardless of who claims the student on their taxes. And if that parent is remarried, then the parent has to include their current spouse's information on the FAFSA, even though that spouse, step parent, might not be contributing to the support of their children, which I know does not seem fair, but it is just how the regulations go. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about the CSS profile, and I have a few other things to cover, and I know I've been talking for quite a bit here. So the CSS profile, I mentioned that some colleges require this in addition to the FAFSA. You want to refer to each college for their CSS deadline. It did open October 1st, so it's available for you to fill it out now. It's not free to complete like the FAFSA is. You do have to complete it and pay for each college that you send it to. And then one big difference with the CSS profile and the FAFSA is if you're divorced or separated, living in different households, then both custodial and non-custodial parent need to fill out a CSS profile. Colleges are using this to determine how much institutional scholarship money to award. So they want a very accurate picture of both families' incomes, both parent incomes on this form. So mistakes to avoid on this, not having a non-custodial parent fill it out, because both parents are typically required. There's only a few colleges that do not require a non-custodial profile form. And then missing the filing deadline, of course, can cause you to not be able to get any institutional scholarship money at all, which you don't want to happen. Okay, how a financial aid award is determined. So what the college financial aid offices do is they take their total cost of attendance all in. So tuition, fees, room and board, books and supplies. Let's say that cost is $50,000. They subtract the student aid index. This used to be called the EFC, or expected family contribution. This is the number the government comes up with when you fill out a FAFSA and submit it. So you fill out your FAFSA, you submit it to the government for processing. They do a federal methodology on it, and they come up with a student aid index number, or SAI. This number is then sent to all the college financial aid offices that you listed on the FAFSA, and the colleges use it to determine financial aid. So they take the cost of attendance, subtract the student aid index to come up with a student's financial need. So if a student aid index for a family was, let's say, $20,000 and the college cost was $50,000, the difference between those two numbers would be $30,000. So at this particular college, the student's financial need would be $30,000. Then what happens? The college tries to meet as much of that financial need as possible. This ranges significantly from college to college. They meet anywhere from 10% all the way to 100%. And this is across the board for the college, not for individual students. So if you're applying to a college that meets 100% of a student's financial need in that last equation where the student's financial need was $30,000, then the student would see about $30,000 in need-based financial aid in addition to merit scholarships. If you're applying to a college that meets 50% of financial need, you might see $15,000 in need-based financial aid plus merit scholarships. This is where it can get scary when you start crunching numbers and you realize how little financial aid you might qualify for as a family, especially if you are middle income. And even if you're lower income, there's only 80 something colleges across the US that meet 100% of students' financial need. So think about that. That's only like 80 something colleges. All the other colleges are a range, anywhere from 10% up to that number. So you could see very different financial aid packages across the board from college to college. One of the things you can do to kind of get an idea of what you might qualify for is use the net price calculator at each college's website. Every college website has one. You can punch in your income and asset information, and then they will spit out a bottom line or net price for you based on that information. And that's going to kind of give you a little bit of an idea. They're not all 100% accurate, but the more information they ask for, the more accurate they are. So it can give you a fairly decent idea of what you might qualify for. So let's talk about strategies for maximizing your financial aid offers. This is one of the last things I wanted to cover. This is really, really important. Um, what if you don't get enough financial aid? This is probably going to happen to the majority of you, I would say. And unless you are a really low income family, like less than $60,000, and you're applying to college and get admitted to colleges that meet 100% of your financial need, you're probably not going to get enough financial aid. You can appeal your financial aid offer. 80% of the families I help through this process receive additional financial aid. I've seen it range anywhere from $2,000 all the way up to $30,000. It just depends on the college and how soon you get the financial aid appeal in. And it really comes down to using a specific strategy. These are all things I go over in my financial aid appeal consultations. I can actually help you draft this financial aid appeal letter. I used to work directly in the financial aid offices at the public and private college level, reviewing these financial aid appeal letters. So I know exactly what colleges are looking for. Even though it's not a guarantee, statistically, 80% success rate is really good, and it's 100% worth writing this letter. Again, you're going to do this directly through the college financial aid offices, not the actual government or the FAFSA. The other thing you can do is report any special circumstances your family has to the financial aid office at each college. So what I mean by that is your 24 income going to be less than 23? That's a special circumstance. Did you have significant medical or dental expenses in 23 or 24? Do you have elder care expenses? Do you pay for K through 12 private education expenses for children that you have in school? Was your 23 income inflated due to a one-time retirement distribution or capital gain or something like that? That's another special circumstance that colleges will take into consideration. So it's really important, if any of this applies to you after you fill out the FAFSA, after you get admitted to college, that you're going through the special circumstance process at each college. I can't tell you how many families I've worked with that come to me. They're in their second or third or fourth year of college, and because they didn't know they could do this, they never did it, and they missed out on thousands of dollars in financial aid. They thought just because they used their 21 or 22 income on the FAFSA, that's how their financial aid was determined, and they didn't know they could report any of this information. It's not something that's well advertised out there, and not something that just anybody would know about. So these are the two top strategies for really maximizing your financial aid offers. And then the third top strategy is what was the other? Oh, outside scholarships. To consistently search for and apply for outside scholarships. So back to the FAFSA and CSS real quick. The FAFSA form you fill out every single year to apply for financial aid. The CSS profile, some colleges only require it the first year, whereas other colleges require that you fill it out every single year. So in order to find that out, you have to connect directly with the college financial aid office to see how often they require it. So that's important information. And then a few common financial aid myths I want to go over with you include expecting that you'll get a great financial aid offer because you have a high GPA and test scores. This is not the case, unfortunately. There's a lot of competition out there for merit scholarships. Some colleges are limited. So even if you're in the top 5% of your class, you might not get any merit scholarship, or you might not get nearly as much as you think. Another myth is expecting you'll get a great financial aid offer because you are lower income. As I mentioned to you before, unless the college meets 100% of a student's financial need, then that is not the case. And you might not get, a great financial aid offer based on that. I do strategy calls with families all the time. If you want to jump on a 30-minute call, talk about your income and assets, what those look like. the types of colleges that you're applying to or your kids are applying to, and then we can crunch numbers and talk more about what that might look like for your family so you can kind of get ahead of the game and have a better idea about that. Another common myth is I make too much money to qualify for financial aid. That's not necessarily the case. I always tell families to apply, even if they think they might make too much money, because at the very least, you can appeal your financial aid offers and ask for more money. But in order to do that, you have to actually get a financial aid offer, and you can't get a financial aid offer unless you fill out the appropriate forms. And then the last myth that I like to go over is that outside scholarships are not worth applying for. So there are so many of them, and they're not just based on need, they're not just based on merit. Students who are applying for like 3 to 5 of these each and every month are the ones that really are getting the best bang for their buck. They can apply for them all through high school, and then for every year that they're in college, they can also apply for them too. Okay, so there's a lot to the financial aid process. As you can see, I just spent about 35 minutes going over the basics. I could make this a 2-hour, 3-hour workshop easily. If you really want to maximize your financial aid offers, there's a lot to think about. One of my biggest goals is to help take the stress out of the process for families and ensure that they're getting all the financial aid that they're entitled to. So what I'm going to share with you is a few of the services and programs that I offer. I get this question a lot to let you know how you can work with me and then leave you with some contact information. Unfortunately, I'm not able to answer questions this webinar because of the volume of people that I have signed up for. So I'll make sure that you know, the number of people that I have signed up for it. So I'll make sure you know how to reach out to me. So I have several different options for families. What I'm really known for is my Financial Aid Academy for parents of high school seniors. I run this every single year. I have 3 levels of service available depending on how closely you want to work with me. It started in September and runs through May, but enrollment is still open for class of 2025 because the FAFSA opened so late, but I am closing enrollment in another week for that. And then early bird registration opens within the next couple of weeks for class of 2026. Another program that's new this year, which I'm excited about, is my 30-day financial aid boot camp. It begins in a few days, December 1st. This is for any student, whether dependent, independent, or graduate student or parent that wants help navigating the financial aid process in a shorter format, shorter term. They don't want to commit and stay with me through May. And it's intended to kind of get you through the nitty-gritty financial aid process and give you a ton of information about it and ensure that you're doing everything that you can to maximize your aid offers. And then I offer individual consulting services. My 30-day financial aid boot camp is $149. It consists of a live weekly webinar with a Q&A session that will be recorded for playback, along with membership in a private Facebook group where you can ask me unlimited questions for 30 days. And that'll be worth its weight in gold because I'm sure a lot of you will have a ton of questions. There's a number of topics we cover in this, not just the FAFSA, CSS Profile, but how to effectively appeal your financial aid offers. I provide you with a financial aid appeal letter template, the best loans to borrow, and things like that. My FAFSA and Financial Aid Academy for parents of high school seniors, Basic, Plus, or Pro. Basically, this gives you access to a group coaching course that runs through May. It includes new content every month on the 1st in small bite-sized chunks of information where I will tell you what you need to be focused on for that particular month. We also do a live monthly webinar with a Q&A session, and the mid-range and highest level, plus and pro level, include direct access to me for the rest of the year for any and all questions. You'll get membership in a private Facebook group for the rest of the year. Excuse me. And if you opt for the pro level, which is my highest level of service, then you can also get some one-on-one consultations with me. Excuse me for just a second, guys. Okay, sorry about that. Lots of talking. This is just an idea of some of the topics I cover. There's a ton of information involved with the financial aid process. I said we're going to take a deep dive into all the private loan options, closing the financial aid gap, finding outside scholarships. I do upload 20 to 50 scholarship resources each month into my Financial Aid Academy for high school seniors also. And then this gives you an idea of the cost of my academy. Remember, my boot camp is $149. Basic level of my academy is $299. Plus level $599, and then pro level $899. There are payment plans available. And then lastly, I provide individual consultations for anything financial aid related. Right now, I'm really helping families fill out the FAFSA and CSS profile. I do this via Zoom. I can fill it out for you to make it easy. I can help you write a financial aid appeal letter. I can help you with scholarship searching, figuring out loan options. Whatever you need help with the financial aid process, I can essentially do for you. This is a listing of all of the individual consultations I provide. I offer a 20-minute phone call, 30 and 50-minute general Zoom consultation for anything financial aid related, 30-minute strategy call for families that I mentioned earlier, 30-minute scholarship strategy session. I do FAFSA consultations, CSS consultations, financial aid appeal letter consultations, and I also offer a 2-hour Zoom consulting package that you can purchase and then use at your convenience, whether you want to do phone or Zoom and, kind of use it over however, whether you want to use it all at once or split it up over the next several months, you can do that also. And then lastly, I do offer a free initial 10-minute consult call with anybody that I've never worked with before. So if you want to learn more about the programs and services I provide, or you want to find out which one is a best fit for you, or you just have a few general financial aid questions, you can also schedule that directly through my website, thefafsaguru.com. You can find my Financial Aid Academy there. You can find my 30-day Financial Aid Bootcamp there. And I also have a consulting tab there that you can click on and book any consulting service with me, including the free 10-minute consultation call, which I encourage you to do. You can contact me at tina@thefafsaguru.com, and you can also follow me on YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook. This is where I share a lot of free information. I'm not really able to answer general questions with this email. As you can imagine, I get so many emails on a daily basis. So that's why I recently added the 20-minute consultation call because of that. But you can schedule the 20-minute call or you can start with a free 10-minute call if you have questions. I really can't get to all of the questions via my email. There's just too many of them, unfortunately. So thank you. Good luck to all of you. I don't know if I have dependent students, independent students, graduate students, parents, probably a combination. I had a lot of people signed up for this webinar. I wish you the best of luck in this process. I encourage you all to get in there in the next couple of weeks to get the FAFSA filled out. And if you have questions for me, then you can reach out to me in the ways that I mentioned, and I'll be happy to answer those questions for you. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I appreciate all of you.